Hey, 1, 2. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 1, 2. Hey, hey. Yeah. Because I did it post fader. So it's easier for me to adjust the volume. Hey, 1, 2. Is the volume level all right on the other side? Now I'm open here. Signal here, right?
Hello, hello. Testing 1, 2. Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you all to everybody for being on time. I just want to say, please enjoy a cup of coffee, have a pastry, and we will be starting in 10 or 15 minutes. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you. Okay, everybody, if I could just have your attention, we would like to start. I hate to interrupt the conversations. The networking is now, I know. But if everybody could please come and take a seat and feel free to sit near the front like a family. Thank you. Everybody's got bright, shining morning faces. Oh, look at you guys. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, and when the last ecosystem builder is seated, we will begin. All right, I think that's it. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Salon Future, part of Vienna Up. Welcome to the Libelle at the Museumsquartier. My name is Naomi Hunt. You don't need to remember that. I work at the Vienna Business Agency and get to do a little bit of emceeing this morning. And we are here at Salon Future. What does that mean? The future is ahead. What's a salon? A Vienna salon, classically, was hosted at someone's home, and it was a place where industrialists, policymakers, artists, thinkers, the odd, eccentric revolutionary would gather to have sparkling conversations about the issues of the day. And we would like to recreate that atmosphere here. So this morning, the issue of the day is startup ecosystems. And we have participants from 24 plus cities in this room today. Wow. And many more joining us online. Hi, wish you were here. And so whatever you want to learn or do, the chances are good there is someone in this room who can help. My colleagues at the Vienna Business Agency have been working very closely with our partners at Dealroom, who will begin by sharing some facts and figures with us, and then host a panel discussion with representatives from the thriving ecosystems of Vienna, Stockholm, and the Paris region. Their tales of success, failure, promising practices will be the food for that sparkling conversation that we plan to have afterwards over lunch at Au Gazelle, where, be there, you want to eat those things. So remember, everybody, our goal today is to figure out how ecosystem builders can work together to create a more connected, more inclusive startup ecosystem in Europe. So let's get started. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Gerhard Hirzi, the CEO of the Vienna Business Agency, my boss.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome on behalf of the City of Vienna and on behalf of the Vienna Business Agency, especially to our international guests. We, of course, deeply hope that your stay in Vienna will be as informative as it will be entertaining and enjoyable. My name is Gerhard Hirzi. I'm the Managing Director of the Vienna Business Agency. Our responsibility is to support businesses here in Vienna, be they national ones or be they international ones, be they small ones or big ones, from startups to corporates. So the well-being of these companies is our mission. And I would like to start with a special thanks to our co-organizers from Dealroom. We're very excited about that cooperation. And of course to our city partners from Scale Cities and Start Alliance, especially the initiating cities Amsterdam and Berlin. And of course to our many friends and colleagues from a number of CE countries we have invited to this salon again. We are very big supporters of being in networks because we believe in cooperation, we believe in collaboration. I think Vienna has learned a lot from other cities in the past, and in return, Vienna's best practices might be shared with other cities of on this continent too. And that's why we have invented this event series, Salon Future. As Naomi already said, there have been a number of these salons at the end of the 19th century, at the beginning of the 20th century here in Vienna. And we don't mean these kind of salons where the nobility or the aristocracy of the Austrian and Hungarian Empire celebrated themselves, but the salons where artists, intellectuals, thinkers met, just people who wanted to change the world. When talking about changing the world, I think it is no coincidence that scale cities and our salon and other networks are urban networks, because cities have an enormous important role to play, and it's also no coincidence that all of you come from cities, global metropolises, just big cities like Vienna, or medium-sized cities, because our challenges are kind of the same. And most of these challenges have become global challenges. They can only be solved on a global level and not on a local level, and that's why we should work together. It's true that most problems, most challenges we are facing today can seen in cities most clearly and most sharply. But on the same side, cities are not only the places where the problems can be seen, but they are also the places where the solutions can be seen. Cities are the places where there is innovation, where there's creativity, where there's curiosity, where there is research and development. And I'm deeply convinced if we succeed in cities, we succeed on the planet. And this idea of responsibility also fueled our format Vienna Up 22 this year. One of the biggest startup festivals this year, I guess, but maybe the biggest decentralized startup festival in the world. And decentralized means it is not only being organized by one organization in one venue, but by in our case by not less than 30 different organizations populating more than 60 different events. Salon Future being one of these events in 28 different locations in 11 Viennese districts. And the idea behind that was to bring people to the ecosystem, to the whole ecosystem of Vienna, because we had the strong impression, the strong feeling that the Viennese ecosystem had the commitment to bundle resources, to bring up new ideas, and to open the whole ecosystem for our international guests. And I would like, of course, to invite you to explore some aspects of this thriving ecosystem too. So finally having you here in Vienna, that must not be taken for granted, because last year we had Vienna Up 21 only on screen, and today this year we have you here live in person, and that's a big thing, a big difference. You maybe know there is something in Vienna that is called Gemütlichkeit. It's kind of coziness or laid-backness or comfort. And this Gemütlichkeit makes Vienna not only a good place to work, but only a good place to live. And therefore, I would like to invite you to stop by at our festival home base at the Karlsplatz. This is just a few minutes from here, where you can mix and mingle with other participants of other events of Vienna Up 22, and you can beautify this by one or the other glass of Viennese wine. Excellent wine. I tasted it yesterday and the day before yesterday. So guarantee for the quality of that wine. It's free of charge, and you are guests there, of course. or you pay just a visit, a short visit to one of our 4 partnering coffee houses. We have 4 Wiener Kaffeehäuser, classically traditional coffee houses. We regard them in Vienna as the first co-working spaces on earth, because there are so many similarities between co-working spaces and coffee houses. And 4 of these traditional ones have decided to join Vienna Up and to open the doors for the participants of the festival. So you get coffee and cake there. But I have a personal advice for you: if you order your coffee, don't just say coffee, because we are not in Germany or we are not in the United States. We have some 20 to 30 different types of coffee. And the thing is, the waiter might be disappointed about that. And the other thing is, Viennese waiters, sometimes they show their disappointment to their customers. They think this is kind of the cultural heritage of Viennese coffee houses. So better check the menu first. So finally, once again, a very warm welcome. We are very glad to have all of you here in Vienna. We're looking forward to that exciting exchange, talk about successes, also talk about failures. So maybe you can talk about the failures after if I'm gone, about our failures, Gabi. And I wish you a wonderful day here in Vienna. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hirzi. If we succeed in cities, we succeed around the planet. Thank you for that overview, and now let's drill into the nitty-gritty. Here to present us with some facts and figures, and then to moderate the panel thereafter, is Cristiana Manzocco, who is the Director of Government Marketing with Dealroom, which is a global data company, providing intelligence on the tech and VC industry. Before joining Dealroom, Cristiana was Director of Investments with Alberta Enterprise, a government fund of funds in Canada. She has worked across North America and Europe and is passionate about working with governments around the world to tell their ecosystem's data-driven story. Cristiana, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Put down all of my things here. Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today at the Salon Future Dealroom Talks. Thank you so much to the Vienna Business Agency as well, to Jan, Gabrielle, Dudu, the whole team for putting on this amazing event. We're so glad to be here. So before I get into the panel with our lovely experts, we wanted to share some introductory remarks from Dealroom, because as we said, we are a data company, and so we like to dig into some of the facts and figures to set the stage for the topic of today's talk, which, as you know, successes and failures. Today we're going to talk about the successes a little bit first, though, Gerhard, because sometimes we like to show a very rosy perspective of our ecosystems, the results of all these years of hard work, policy, programs, etc. And we see these types of successes demonstrated, for instance, through first-time unicorns. So we can see here the ecosystems where first-time unicorns were born this year. And these results are due to years of policy, programs, looking at the ecosystem, pulling the different economic development levers to see what we can improve upon. It shows a very positive culmination of these years of hard work. I think something else we can also see from this map here is that unicorns are now found everywhere around the world. So they're no longer established only in major tech hubs. There's probably a lot of cities and regions here on this map that maybe you've never heard of before. And that's actually very, very exciting and super positive for our tech ecosystem globally. With that being said, we have seen a trend over the COVID period of startups having to be more nimble, more innovative, grittier, all of these different things they've had to deal with. But at the same time, talent and startups migrating to other places outside of the city center, right? So perhaps startups and talent are seeing that they no longer have to pay for a city center rent bill in order to work at a startup and scale their startup. So this is a very encouraging trend, and it also opens the door for emerging tech hubs to really look at how they attract these startups to scale in their city. So as we say, ecosystem building happens over time. It doesn't just happen overnight. And we can see how more mature ecosystems, like, for instance, Silicon Valley, but also other EU hubs, are seeing very positive momentum. They're seeing how the startups, the founders who started these very large unicorn organizations like Spotify, iZettle, and Klarna, those founders and also those management teams have actually gone on to found their own startups. They've taken what they learned through working for one startup, they go on and they take that operational expertise and that network, and they found startups that tend to grow much faster even. So we can see how these 3 large scale-ups have now led to 25 different startups getting their start. And so this is a demonstration of the momentum that happens in ecosystems over time, right? And we can also see how once these founders graduate from these large scale-ups, they then become active in their own ecosystems in different ways. They become angel investors, they become mentors, they can provide that smart capital to up-and-coming startups. And all of that leads to a much stronger ecosystem. And I think that this is captured very well by Jessica Schultz, the partner with Northstone Capital, how once these graduates move on from a startup, they then become these role models and these pillars in an ecosystem. And those success stories are actually very important for startups getting their start, for founders considering whether or not they actually want to start a startup, because they can look ahead and they can see the successes that have taken place. And that kind of paves the road for them to then follow along that journey themselves. And that kind of flywheel effect leads to really positive momentum in an ecosystem. So again, these are the successes that come from many, many, many years of data, programs, policy development. It didn't just happen overnight. And I look forward in the panel to talking through what some of the challenges were along the way before this fantastic result came to be. So we can also look once again at how startups are raising funding all over countries. It's not just in the major hubs. And COVID has made this even more possible. So we see that there's 34 unicorns now in France, which is a pretty incredible number. There was a time, however, where there was a lot of fear about French startups moving away from France, maybe moving to the US to raise funding or to find new customers or to IPO. And maybe that is still a fear, and we look forward to talking about that in the panel as well. But we can also see how somehow, I'm sure through concerted effort and policy development, France has been able to turn that around and actually lead to all of these startups wanting to stay in France, to scale their companies, to raise funding there, because there's a real attractiveness and there's real benefits for them to do that. And then we can see how other areas, countries like Austria, for instance, are really leveraging the raw materials they have at their disposal to position themselves as an attractive place, not only for talent to stay and grow, but also for startups and investors to actually come to the country to establish their headquarters. And so how has Austria been so successful at doing that? I look forward to hearing more. But you can see just through simply the quality of life. I mean, it's not only about business. I think all of us here today over this period have seen just how beautiful Vienna is right now, right? I mean, the architecture, the coffee, the wine, all of these things that we very much enjoy makes the city livable and makes the city a place where startups and talent want to come, start their lives, to live and to work. So there's so many different ways that ecosystems around the world can position themselves as soft landing pads where startups can establish themselves. And we've seen how this approach for Vienna has paid real dividends. You can see the number of Austrian startups that have been founded by distributed teams around the world. The fact that foreign investors participated in 93% of mega rounds in Austria, and then also just the number of foreign companies that have set up offices in Austria and Vienna. So these are very positive trends. And as I said, we like to show the rosy, the positive outcomes. But now, I would like to learn more about what were the challenges and what were the stumbling points along the way that led us to where we are today. So let's get into it. Successes and failures. What does it take to build a startup ecosystem where companies can scale? So with that, I would love to invite my lovely panelists to the stage, please. So, join me. Oh, thank you. Great. So with me here today, I have Ariane Pousset, Project Lead of Startups at Invest Stockholm. We have Gabrielle Tatzberger, Director of Startup Services with Vienna Business Agency, and Thomas Favel, Deep Tech Industry Expert with Choose Paris Region. Yay! So I'd like to introduce each of them and provide a little bit more of a bio but on these very accomplished people. So Ariane Pousset, as Project Manager Startups at Invest Stockholm, the official investment promotion agency of the City of Stockholm, Ariane Pousset works very closely, both strategically and operatively, with the city's vibrant tech ecosystem and startup scene. Prior to joining Invest Stockholm, Ariane held executive positions in business development, sales, and public relations at larger US companies, including EMI Music Publishing, Thomson, and PR Newswire. No longer active in politics today, Ariane was an elected politician on Stockholm City Council between 2006 and 2014. A mother of 3 and an entrepreneur at heart, Ariane also runs a hobby company, Ariane Stockholm, distributing jewelry products she designs and resells in her spare time. And I would encourage you to ask about Ariane's beautiful jewelry, because I've seen her wearing it, and it's pretty fantastic.
Thanks.
Yes, a little plug. Gabrielle Tatzberger is Startup Services Director at the Vienna Business Agency, Managing Director of Vienna Region, and member of the Supervisory Board of INITS, the high-tech incubator of Vienna. She has long-term experience and is passionate to support founders and startups and the Vienna startup scene as a whole. The Vienna Business Agency offers funding, infrastructure, and 360-degree service with networks, workshops, and coaching for Viennese and international founders and startups. And lastly, but not least, of course, Thomas Favel, Deep Tech Industry Expert with Choose Paris Region. Thomas leads the Paris region's consulting practices for the deep tech sectors. He advises foreign companies looking to expand and plug into the regional ecosystem. He specializes in growth strategy, technology management, and public-private partnerships. Since 2010, he has advised hundreds of businesses, from idea to market, from first customer to growth, from local market to international expansion. Before joining Choose Paris Region, he worked in industry. He's a mechanical engineer specialized in innovation management, and he regularly attends international conferences about AI, disruptive technologies, innovation, entrepreneurship, and French business practices. So can we get a warm welcome to our expert panelists, please? Thank you. Lovely. So now, as we're getting started, I just wanted to let everyone know that we do have a Slido Q&A set up. So I really would encourage you to use the QR code. I'm sure you're all familiar with how to use those now. And please, as you're listening to the conversation, feel free to submit any questions you have, and we will have about 10 minutes after the panel for our panelists to answer those questions. Great. Everyone got it? I'll wait. Okay. So how are we all doing today in lovely Vienna?
It's fantastic. The sun is shining. We come from the cold north, at least me. You guys come from mid-Europe, so, and you're from Vienna.
Yes.
Happy to be here.
Me too. It's so lovely. Okay. So while people are getting their bearings with the Slido, how about we begin? So first off, we have people from all over the world here today. Some of them know about your organizations, but some of them don't. And this is an opportunity to just learn a little bit more. So if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick rundown on what your organization does and what your goals are. Gabrielle, can we start with you?
Okay, so hello also from my side. I'm very happy because we had several Salon Futures already, but this is the first real one. So I'm very happy to have all of you here. Gerhard Hirzi, he mentioned already a little bit what the Vienna Business Agency is doing, maybe to go a little bit more in detail. So we really try to support especially Viennese companies, but also companies that would like to come Vienna. And we do that through 3 strands. We always say one is real estate. So we are one of the biggest land site owners in Vienna. So if there is a company who wants to come to Vienna, we have land sites for them. But we also see our task in really new city development sites that we also encourage that there is business going on. So we are building technology centers. Just last year we opened a co-working space with laboratory infrastructure for life science startups because we saw the market doesn't offer this kind of infrastructure. So besides in new development sites, we also see, okay, where is a market failure and where there is a need for future economic development, that we support that. So this is one. The other one is that we have different grants programs from small grants up to 500,000 euros. Just now we have a call, it's called Zero Emission City, which is also open globally, so also international startups can apply for that. And this is how we try to support companies in Vienna, but also to bring new innovative technologies to Vienna, because we need that in order to achieve our ambitious aims. And the third part is really our broad range of services we have. We have incoming support, as you're doing, Thomas, but we also have incubators, workshops, coachings, and we have specific focus on creativity, creative industries, and also technology-oriented companies, and also the topic of impact is a huge topic in our house. So, and we love to get connected internationally, and that's why I'm very happy that we have this audience here today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Ariane?
Yeah, I work for an organization called Invest Stockholm, which is the investment promotion agency of the city. So we work with attracting investors and talents to the city, but I work in a department called economical growth. So it's all about to make Stockholm as attractive as possible to get the talents and investments to the city.
Mm-hmm.
That's in short. And we also have a special focus this year on impact and creative industries. We will look at the startup scene.
Great. Can't wait to hear more about that. And Thomas?
Yes, at the Choose Paris region, as it says, we promote the Paris region. So the Paris city and its region. It's a 12 million inhabitant region, so it's quite large. So our mission properly, we operate connection services. We act as a one-stop shop for foreign companies willing to set up their business in Paris and its region. So we work closely with territories, with municipalities, to offer the best options for them to land, to soft land on the best place. So we connect them to experts, we bring them market insights, we find the best real estate solution for them, we find accountants, lawyer, and so on. So it's really easing their setup. And just to be clear, we don't operate incubators, accelerators. We rely on the ones that are operated by municipalities or private actors.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you all three for that. I'm sure, the people in the audience are likely very interested in the work you do every day. And you're among your peers. So now time for the candid conversation. I want to have an open discussion about not only the successes, but also some of the challenges of ecosystem building, because we know that it's not easy all the time. And in my experience, it's quite an iterative process of trial and error, seeing what works, and kind of retooling for the next time. So first, let's talk about the successes. So what's working for your ecosystem as it relates to nurturing your scaling ventures? If you can maybe provide a couple examples of what's working really well right now.
Maybe I start. I want to mention 3 things where I'm really happy and proud that we had the possibility to do so. One is, for example, that we offer our services in 18 languages.
Wow.
Also need a political commitment to do so, and I'm very proud that we can do that. And the idea is not only the language, because most of the people speak English. This is not so much the topic, but also to translate the culture. So you really need to meet the people on the right level. This is one. Another thing is, I don't know if it's a success, but I'm happy that we can try out now, is our startup grant, where the first batch is running just now, because we saw in our incubator programs that people are in and they get workshops and coachings, but at the same time, they had to work in order to afford the living. And they always told us, oh, they would need more time, but they cannot afford. And now with the startup grant, we can give them 1,300 euro per month for 6 months. And it's up to 3 members of the founding team. And so they have really time to adapt and to develop the business model. If will be successful, we don't know, but we have the possibility to try out, and I'm very happy about that. And the third thing really is, to be honest, Vienna Up, because we planned it 2020, 4 weeks before everything was ready. 4 weeks before the guests are coming, we had the first lockdown. Last year, we planned hybrid, thanks to many, many program partners. So some are sitting here as well. We are very thankful for the partnerships we have here with our stakeholders. And then, 2 months before the date, we saw, okay, there will be no on-site event. We switched to digital. I can tell you a lot of failures there as well. But now that this year we really managed to have 30 program partners, 60 events, and that over the time they always stick also to the idea that bundling the competences we have is good, which is not, you cannot expect that people believe in the idea that in some we are stronger than if I do my thing alone. And the resonance of the participants so far is really good, because you can pick and choose what you need at the moment, and the other things, okay, are going on as well. But yeah, but coming to failures later, there are many issues we can improve as well.
That's the next question. So, okay, Ariane.
Well, it's been, usually you talk, what's the secret sauce of a tech ecosystem? Very hard to answer. And it's not something that you do in a day or two. Looking at Stockholm, it's something that's been built over, like 1994, we made the biggest fiber network of the city. That gave access for people from Ericsson to start, just teaching people to do business online. So I think that's one of the successes of the city, that things have happened during more than 40 years, but it takes time to build a successful tech ecosystem. And it's also the Nordic values that we have, with flat hierarchies, with the ease of doing business in Sweden, and a political stability. So, yeah, I would say that's the success of the tech ecosystem. And then it's so huge now that we have all the verticals that we're building, like the music tech ecosystem, we have the fintech ecosystem, and now we're building the impact tech ecosystem.
Wow, that's very exciting. And I think it's also great here that we have folks from ecosystems at different stages along their journeys too. So we can see quite mature to, still emerging and kind of gaining momentum. Thomas, what's working in your ecosystem?
I think about two things, because it's a mix of different initiatives that lead to such a scale-up movement. No, it's first maybe you need lighthouses to help people see the ecosystem from a single perspective. You need to, for instance, I think about Station F. Station F is the largest startup campus in the world. It's in Paris Center. It hosts 1,000 startups under the same roof. It's amazing. It's really something that blows your mind when you have the chance to visit it. and it acts like a magnet for attracting investors. I mean, VCs, they want to be there. They want to pick the next champion out of this wonderful place. It hosts accelerators. It makes it really readable for the whole ecosystem, but it's just a part of it. So that would be my first tip that Paris can share with other cities. You need some shining lighthouse for that. Second thing is maybe the specialization of some places. Apart Station F, which is quite diverse in terms of industries and so on. You need to have incubators for specific industries. If you want to grow a champion in the fashion tech, you need to talk fashion language. Okay, Paris is known for fashion, but you need people that can find the right investors, understand the business models, and so on. So we have 300 different incubators in the Paris city.
Wow.
So plus 50 accelerators. So nearly each of them are specialized. It can be for deep tech, it can be for anything. So it helps a lot because, once again, investors have portfolios that focus sometimes on an industry, a vertical. So they need to see it clearly from outside of the city. So there are other things, but
maybe I would like to add what really triggered a lot of development in Vienna is really people who were very successful abroad and came back and then wanted to give something back and started different initiatives. If a fund or an incubator accelerated, or they are investors now, and this really, if you have these role models and they have the money really to do something, and they're so keen to really give back, it really makes a huge difference. Or if you don't have these kind of people, so you mentioned it as well, how many investments very successful startup founders have made already, and this we see also in Austria and in Vienna.
Amazing.
I totally agree. You showed a very nice Swedish slide with Klarna and Spotify and what companies they reinvested in.
Yep.
And I think that one really important key part of a tech ecosystem is to have the experienced capital.
Yep.
So it's not only having money flowing in, it's having people that actually knows the journey of a startup and knows, what they're going to go through, the startups, before they're unicorns, decacorns, or whatever, with billions of dollars.
Exactly. Amazing. I agree. Okay. So that was all very lovely, and I appreciate hearing about the successes of your ecosystems. But let's talk about failures now, okay? So let's talk about challenges, right? I think there's probably a lot of folks in the audience who have worked within their organizations to come up with programs or initiatives, things you were sure that the ecosystem wanted that were going to be very successful, and then for whatever reason they fell flat. Maybe it was because there wasn't consultation of key ecosystem people, or maybe it just wasn't the right time. But can each of you share something that really did not go well in your ecosystem?
For example, Vienna, as you may know, is very known for culture and music, but not so much as a maybe startup location, an innovative location. And that's why we also try to invite international startups to come here. So since 2008, we have this Vienna Startup Package. It's a global competition, and we invite startups here. And there are two failures, so to say. One was that we really had to work on the expectation management, so what we really can deliver and what the startups were expecting to get. So we had a lot of lessons learned in order to really achieve that it fits for us and for them as well, and that we do not invite a startup where we already afterwards know we cannot really help them and this is not the right location for them, and this is fine as well. And the other thing is that at the first batches we just had male participants. And I was, okay, we have a global competition, and somehow it always happened that in the end we had just male founded startups here. And that's when we really made a quota, so to say, an informal quota for us, and also with our scouting agency. And we said, okay, minimum 30% of the startups that are coming here have to be female founders. And that showed me again that without going this extra step, somehow it happens still. So this is a plaidoyer for all the actions we are doing now. We always have this in mind. You need to communicate maybe in other networks. You really have to have an eye on it. As it is often happens on panels, only male panels, and if you ask them why there is no woman, there are, but you have to go sometimes this extra mile in order to get them. And this is really something I would like to give to all the people who are doing such programs. They are out there, but you have sometimes go this extra mile. And then we achieved it, so it was possible. But at the beginning, I was really a little bit frustrated because I thought, how can that happen?
And you augmented your approach, it seems
Yes,
like.
yeah.
And I'm very glad to say that our panel today is not an all-male panel. Sorry, Thomas. Yeah. Would anyone else like to share about some failures?
Well, I actually like to talk about the female entrepreneurs, because we talk a lot about gender equality in Sweden, but we still see that private equity, like 1% of the capital goes to female-funded companies. It's kind of, the values doesn't align. And so I would say that's a huge ecosystem failure that we haven't looked at the females before now. Now it's kind of trendy, but we should have maybe started 15 years ago. And also what I see as a failure is that we don't have enough of females in the tech companies. And that's, an educational problem. There's a lot of, can be discussed why it is that way, but that's really something that needs to change, and not only in Stockholm, globally.
And are there any, mitigation programs or ways that you're trying to actually combat this phenomenon in your ecosystem?
Yeah, so like 3 years ago, we started the Stockholm Scale-Up program, which was for underrepresented founders, so foreign-born females, mostly non-educated or coming from Syria, for example. So it's not a Canadian scientist who starts a company in Stockholm. And that has really helped for them to get a network and to get access to investors. They probably didn't know what an investor was until they started the program. So I think that the ecosystems are built of very different types of people that are in it, and you need to see the whole ecosystem as like small dots that are coming together, either if you divide it vertically or founder-wise.
And it differentiates a lot. For example, life science impact, you have many female
Definitely.
founders.
Yeah.
In other fields, manufacturing,
And
it's harder, yeah.
That's so funny, because that's another failure that we have, that we don't get the investments to the social innovative companies, but we see most female founders doing social innovation. So yeah, that's something that at least Stockholm is working on and needs to work more on. The guys that started Spotify and Klarna that knew each other from high school, they don't need help. I'm like, bye guys. So it's better to concentrate to help where you can do something as a municipality. Where the market takes care of themselves, you just leave them.
No kidding.
I share the same point of view on female entrepreneurship. We have a kind of a list of it's called the French Tech 120. FT 120 is there are only 8 female founders.
Oh wow!
So yeah, we have the same issue. So female access, female founder programs are trying to solve this issue, but it's quite slow, and it's maybe still a failure. But the other failure I would like to share is maybe strange, but you have highlighted this booming number of unicorns in France. It's because of a 2021 and 2020 mega rounds that were good news. Of course, it injected a lot of money in the ecosystem, so it's always good. But it created a lack of early stage investment rounds. So now, if you want to have this seed round, it's harder than before. You have VCs that focuses on high growth or series A, B, C, D, and have less time for seed money.
So it's the opposite in Austria. We have good seed and pre-seed money, but the growth money is lacking.
It's a question of time because we have been through these different stages of VCs changes. We have seen 10 years ago the startup ecosystem arising. It was starting to be cool to be an entrepreneur, to be a startupper, and then the money flowed for seed stage. So it's moving as well as the VC funds are growing, and so we need to come back and say, hey, we need next champion is waiting for your money too.
One other failure, but I would like to mention it's the topic of talents, because everything is, money is important, but talent is important as well. And we have a regulatory framework in Austria which doesn't really make it easy for talents from outside of the European Union to come to Vienna. And we have many stakeholders who are trying to change this, but it's in the end a political decision. And unfortunately, it's still in a system which makes it harder for startups to get talents from outside of the European Union. And this was really a very frustrating experience, that exactly somehow that what would be necessary, but it doesn't happen. So, and it's not the city or we at the Vienna Business Agency who can change that. But then we thought, okay, how can we build a workaround? And my colleagues today had this great idea to install a business immigration office. So to help, we know the process is complicated and we know it's difficult, but we ease the way to get this visa. And we see now that really people are very much appreciating that, because you have a person who helps you, who knows the structures, because if you come new to a city, you don't know the culture and the framework conditions. So it's sometimes also a workaround necessary, because you're not in the position to change rules and regulations. Even if you think you know how it should be, you cannot change it, or you believe you know how it should be. And then sometimes really the ways to manage somehow to install a workaround in order to succeed anyway and help the startups. But talents, I think, is a topic in your cities as well.
Definitely. And what Stockholm is doing, they will know in May. Now it's June. So last month they launched something called the International House, which they have in Copenhagen, and Helsinki has one as well, to actually gather all get your personal number, here's how you start a company under the same roof, because otherwise it takes ages. It's not a fast process. And I think successes of other ecosystem, I would say Estonia has done it very well with their e-citizenship and the fact that it's easy to start a company. So I think that, we have a lot to do on national level as well to get more entrepreneurs and foreign startups.
I think Amsterdam with the startup visa, they are doing that very well. I would have wished to have something like that in Vienna.
Well, guys, I only asked for one failure, and I feel like it's all just coming now. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for being so open and talking candidly about it. I'm sure the audience appreciates it. So now I'd like to change the conversation a little bit and talk about funding, because we were talking about interest from foreign investors, gaps that exist currently in the ecosystem for whether it be early stage companies or more growth, mature stage companies. So how do you all feel about foreign investment coming in? Are there any fears? about investors from, let's say, the US coming into your city, or is it just looked at really positively?
So from our point of view, as we don't have so much growth money here in Austria, we are very happy when foreign investors come and invest in Austrian startups. We would love most of them also stay here, but sometimes, you know, if they grow, the investor also enjoys a lot if they open an office where they are located, which is a fact. So I think if we would have more growth money here in Austria, maybe we would also, for the economy in Austria, have more positive effects of this growth money. But it is like it is, and what we really see, what I've mentioned, because sometimes also for politicians it's quite hard if a startup moves away, but we really see that they come back. And maybe it's because the quality of living in Vienna is so good, or because of friends and family. There are different things, but and this should not be underestimated, because they were away, they bring new networks, new knowledge, and bring it back to the city. So yeah, it is a negative development sometimes maybe, but it's also positive. And in the end, the startup founders itself have to decide who is the right investor for me. And it's not a decision the city or the politicians can make. The company owners have to look who is the best next step for me and who is the best investor. And if he's from another country, it's good.
In Stockholm, we are really happy because in December there was an article in Bloomberg that stated that Stockholm or Sweden gets $4.5 billion of investments to purpose-driven companies. And I think I see a switch after we have a war in Ukraine, we have had, you know, the COVID situation. We want more purpose-driven money to come to Stockholm. It's not only the capital, it's what kind of capital is coming in.
As far as Paris is concerned, we are very open to foreign investments, foreign money, based on a simple calculus. In France, you can count 100k euro per job created. So you have a simple calculus. Bring money, you will create directly or indirectly. You will create jobs, and that's what we are aiming for. It's offering quality jobs, but number of jobs as well. So we have seen a growing amount of foreign investment through VC money. Yes, they come a lot from the US, but we don't see it as a threat. We see it as an opportunity. And some companies, there are questions about that. So trying to answering a bit early, but that French companies came to the US because they have the opportunity to expand their market there, but without leaving France. You know, it's a 60 million inhabitant country. You cannot let it down. So it's they are just expanding thanks to this money, bringing to the French headquarters. Some of them have moved their headquarters to US. So that's a business life.
Yep.
But they didn't left France really. They bring sometimes more research in France, as there is ×2 cost of a researcher in the US than in France. So they keep some research in France to for tech companies. It makes sense. So an opportunity.
Great. And Ariane, I remember you telling me about how there's actually been a really encouraging trend of Swedish startups and founders wanting to be in Sweden, right? Like there was a time maybe where they were moving elsewhere, but now the tide has really changed. So can you talk?
I will actually ask Dealroom to look at that question. No, yeah, we see a trend that the Swedish startups that usually move their head office to Silicon Valley, I mean, Silicon Valley is not what it was once, are staying in Stockholm and operating from the headquarters in Stockholm. But I can't mention any numbers. but I will after I've spoken to Dealroom.
We'll help you out with that happily.
But maybe one reason is also this, I know from Vienna, that also US investors know that it's cheaper to live here, it's a high quality, and you get cheaper and easier the talents, because in Silicon Valley, a high talent is really expensive. Living is expensive, and we in Europe, compared to Silicon Valley, are quite cheap, and the talents are there still.
Yeah.
People like to come to our cities. Maybe this is...
And I think, we're all human beings, so the soft values are
Yeah.
really important. And Silicon Valley turned out, I was there just before the pandemic. I saw people my age asking for money, and they weren't even drug addicts. And I was like, what's going on here? If you work for 7-Eleven, you can't afford to live in Silicon Valley or San Francisco. So we see the companies are moving to Austin, which is a creative where South by Southwest is. So I think we see a shift in the trend on how we look at tech or capital or us as human beings and this world, and who thought there would be war in Europe and a pandemic for 2 years? No one. So obviously things are changing even in the tech scene.
Yep, no kidding. It's very true. So now I'd like to change gears a little bit. So there's a question on the screen that I'm interested in asking, and I think it also dovetails really nicely with something we'd been discussing as a group before. So the question is, in building your city's ecosystem, which group of stakeholders are the hardest to bring on board? But I'd like to add to that and say, we were talking about open innovation last night, right? And kind of engaging different areas of our ecosystem, corporates, governments, to encourage them to take a chance on startups and to get involved in innovation. So what does that process look like?
I believe that, as we said before, but the role of large corporation is crucial. It's they have to be excellent in open innovation. Because it's a question of survival for them. I guess that they know that, but some of them are slower than the others. We have seen many initiatives from large banks that were just putting money years ago in every single fintech that was popping up without clear purpose. So it was good, but not very efficient, just starting the process. Open innovation is now more mature in Paris. It took time to have people in the large corporation that were able to manage startup relationship, understand the difference of pace between them and the startups. It's really about that. And also educate decision makers to understand how it works. So I believe that it's really now that open innovation from large corporation is efficient. The second step, but I will let my co-speakers maybe add on this, that's municipalities. They play a role as well, and that's the next to be educated.
and maybe concerning municipalities and cities, what we experienced in Vienna is the more clear the objective is, the easier it is. Because if you just tell all the authorities you should cooperate with startups, it's okay, yeah, it's also different language, it's a different speed. The administration should manage and not only innovate, so it's really hard to convince them to work with startups. But for example, now as we have this aim as the city of Vienna to become zero-emission city by 2040, which is a huge challenge, but all the administration knows now that this is our aim. And so, and everybody has different room to maneuver and to take action. And now we see that this is also more interesting for them to do so. And it always depends on people. So if you think of open data, if you think of innovation in specific fields and how you manage your city, it's always also people's business. If you have someone on top who really is convinced that we can manage our city better with innovation, it's happening. And if you don't have so much this understanding on top, it's much harder to really get something done and to pilot things. And this is a long-term process somehow, but having an ambitious aim, I'm not sure if just, being not so, the speed, we have to speed up a little bit. But this is very much depending on the different structures we have in the cities.
Cities takes time. I mean, when you meet a startup and they want to have the city as a client, I tell them it's going to take you 2 or 3 years just to get the right meeting. So you will
Dealroom is laughing.
So try to get your private clients first, grow a little bit, and then come back to the municipality. But it's true that municipalities needs to be more bold, but it's not easy because of the structure that we have.
Yeah.
But myself, I see myself as a facilitator. So it's really, that would be the role that I play in the ecosystem. Not that I do so much, but, to networking, get the right people to meet. That's basically all you can do as a government official or working for municipality.
Mm-hmm. And I remember you saying a similar thing, Gabrielle, about being that kind of catalyst between different areas of the ecosystem, right? Like a museum, for instance, and then maybe like an AR/VR company, right?
This is what we try just now. We have a call open for museums to work with new technology offers, so it's culture and technology to match that, because we see there are really cool tools out there for new user experience, for data storage in museums and so on. And now we give a little bit money in order to support that these two different worlds are working together. And this is, I think these are so small steps where you can also, with a little financial support, because it's, you need resources to do so, you can really bring new initiatives also into such institutions.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I have one last question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the panelists to ask each other questions if they have any. But Ariane, you talked a lot about Stockholm as a social impact city, and we've spoken about investing for good, making sure that diverse founders are supported, founders from different backgrounds, etc. So what does that look like for Stockholm?
It's starting to look great, but we just launched today the impact report, but that's really something that we want to do. When I talk to players in the ecosystem, we're like, let's stop talk about unicorns. Now we talk about impact unicorns. And what we mean about that is companies that would make a change for 1 billion people instead of making $1 billion. Because that's truly what, tech for good. We need to all help to change the world and not only think about making money and investing and get your investment back in 3 years. And I see a shift, and I think it's because of what's been happening in the last years. So Stockholm is really trying to be the home of impact and to attract more impact companies to the city and more capital. But that's the hardest part, because now we're building a new ecosystem. And we don't have that experienced capital. We have 4 unicorns that are in the impact sector. One is Kry, which is medtech. Then you have mobility, Einride. So it's still a learning curve to build that ecosystem. Because there was the question, who was the most important player in the stakeholder in the ecosystem? They're all interlinked. If you don't have good universities, you don't have good startups. If you don't have bold founders, you won't get the capital. So they're all interlinked, and I would say everything is as important. They all make an important part of the pie or piece.
We will copy maybe some of your initiatives as we are
Please do.
heading to the Olympic Games in Paris.
Oh, yeah.
2024 is just tomorrow, and we have a goal for these Olympic Games. It's to be the first neutral Olympic Games. So it's very, very ambitious. So we started, of course, not today. We started years ago, building the proper village for the Olympic teams, with according to the best solution, and that will be used for living for families afterwards. That's just an example, but we also need anything from energy, from logistic, from it's a huge impact. Such an event has an impact. So we have to find disruptive solutions that can help us make this Olympic Games neutral. It's excellent example.
It's a challenge, absolutely. So, do you all have any questions for each other?
We like Vienna and Paris.
I would be interested because, you know, thinking of the situation now, we have some new challenges we are facing. We were not thinking about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So thinking of the new geopolitical situation we have with the conflict in Ukraine and also with the problems in the delivery chain. So this just-in-time global, you can get anything, I think it's over. And the thing is, I would be interested in your opinion, what would that mean or what does that mean for Europe and also our startup ecosystem in Europe? If you have any opinion about that.
It's a very sad situation globally, but as an ecosystem, we don't see any direct impact on our supply chain. Some, of course, but not so many. The reflex, this new situation pushes deciders to relocate some industrial sites in France, which is a good thing, and it takes time. So we are now seeing more projects of this kind. I would say that it's not a big benefit, but it's a good shift for future organization. So we see a quite good move.
I don't know what to say.
Well, then it's okay. You don't have to.
No, but I think that, yeah, the supply chain, when you talk about hardware, the heavy industry in Sweden, there's a lot of issues going on right now. And of course, if the economy is affected, the tech scene will be affected, even if you don't deal with the same type of problems. So I think it's going to be very interesting 2 years or 3 years to come, to be honest, to see what's going to happen in the economy.
Absolutely. So another question I wanted to ask is, I know people in the room and also the panelists here, sometimes as ecosystems, it feels as though we're competing with each other for talent, for startups, for capital, right? Like this is a reality, I think, of being a European tech hub. So how do you all see the value of the Scale Cities network and being able to have dialogue with each other, being able to call up some of the folks in the audience? What does that look like?
I'm really happy for the network. I see the other European cities as my colleagues, where I can ask for advice. I know Vienna is an excellent city for female founders. You have great results in that. So it's not about benchmarking, it's about learning and helping each other out. And I always talk about that Europe is so small. So if you look at the global level, we should work so much closer and together. I mean, it's not a long flight from Stockholm to Vienna, even if it does some CO2 emissions. But yeah, I think it's important to cooperate within Europe in the startup scene.
I totally agree. I think we cannot afford to fight against each other. We have to bundle resources. At the same time, it's really hard to make such a network really active and livable. So thanks for the initiators, really, because it needs also a lot of effort, and we all have enough to do. It's not that we are waiting for additional work. So it's really a strong effort to really bring out, okay, what we really can do together in order to have benefits, so win-win situations, and to identify them and try out with limited resources we all have. So it's also not so easy to make a really good network, because coming together and talking with each other is nice, but really to have benefit out of it. But I think we made really first good steps, and just now I know whom I can call in Barcelona, or now in Paris, or in London, or in any other city, because we know each other. And this is, so when a startup now comes to me, and they tell me, market entry, I don't know, any country, and I say, I know someone there, I can call, they connect to the ecosystem. So I always say it's ecosystem entry point. And this is very helpful for startups. And so it's always the balance between how much effort you afford to give into the network. But we had already some really good win-win situations, and this was only possible because we talked with each other and we knew each other. So I think it's really worthwhile to foster these networks. Mm-hmm.
To be honest, on that point, I'm often asked to compare, for instance, Munich and Paris. Because US investors have this view of Europe as a big puzzle, so they want to choose the best option for their business to grow. That's fair, so we do this, and we often try to be honest.
We have Munich in the audience. He'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
So we use Dealroom data or any other database, but sometimes, and no, every time, it's a personal choice.
Yeah.
So in the end, benchmarking cities around Europe is something that we have to do because we are asked to. But in the end, the decider, the CEO, or this person who will relocate to Europe, they will choose the city where his or her daughter will study, or where his family came from.
Or it's also which objective they have, because market entry France is different from market entry Central Eastern Europe, and maybe then Vienna or Munich is the better choice. Or if you want the German-speaking market, maybe Paris is not the best place to start. But so I think also we know from the international startups coming from Asia and US, they see Europe, okay, where is my best market entry? Europe. And then the biggest cities popping up. Vienna is not on the map at the first step, but with the package it came on the map. And then they're just checking out, okay, what do I want to do and what is the best place to start that?
Of course.
And in addition to the personal things we know often from Vienna due to the quality of life we have, sometimes this is a good argument, but it's not the only one.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think with that we can gracefully move into the Q&A period. And we already have some very interesting questions up on the screen that I've been looking at throughout the session. So how about we ask the first one? So what areas do foreign startups and scale-ups need most support with when coming to a new country?
It depends on the stage of their relocation or setting up a plan. First, they need market insights, really data to choose whether it's one city or another, but also to prove the potential return on investment of this expansion phase. Then they need to be supported at each and every administrative steps. Otherwise,
what happens?
Problems ahead.
What happens?
I think that any country has its administrative nightmares, and so they need to find the right expert to manage paperwork and I always have excellent feedback on that. Big thanks for the connections. I've never felt alone or connections. So that's what I need.
And in addition to the business questions, is also we have such an expert center. It's also if you bring kids or your husband or your dog and you come from Asia, okay, how can I bring my dog here? So it's also very banal questions that are coming, and they are very thankful if you can help with that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And very important, because when it comes to talent attraction, if your mate doesn't like it, then the talent will leave with the mate. So we also are working, how can we help the wives or the husbands that are coming with somebody to the tech scene working for Spotify to make them feel at home coming to Stockholm.
Yes. I mean, it may be interesting to the audience that not only is building the tech ecosystem your job, but also finding a way to get someone's dog to your local city is also a priority. And it is, you know, not joking. Okay. So next question. So should the focus of government support, oh, it moved, okay. Should the focus of government support be on selected high growth firms, or should slow growing scale ups or even SMEs receive more tailored expansion support?
There is support needed in all levels, and I think all cities are doing that. It's not the question that if you're talking now about startups, that SMEs or corporates are not important, but we have a focus on startups now, but that in Austria we have a very, very strong SME structure, and they also need to innovate, to expand, and they are often hidden champions on the world market. So it's not that one group is more important than the other. We all need them, and we have different kind of services for different kind of groups. But today we are talking about startups. So.
Yes. True. So what I'm hearing is it's not one size fits all. You need support across the board for all different types of companies.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't focus on size. In Paris, we have a policy or just a will, is that we want to fill the gap in the value chains different value chains that we have. If we detected a lack of I don't know, logistic players in that kind of e-commerce or last mile delivery, we will hunt for this kind of player from abroad, essentially. If that's just an example, but we try not to have only high growth firms, which is good. It creates a lot of jobs, so we don't refuse it. But we prefer to focus on the ones who fill a gap. And it's a tough job. I mean, it needs to be accurately analyzed beforehand. You need to be conscious of your own gaps, and that's really interesting. And that's sometimes something that we are asked for at the Choose Paris region.
Okay. So what's the greatest value add that an ecosystem can provide to a startup? Any takers? It's probably not just one thing.
No,
right?
that's why my head is spinning when I'm thinking about the question. But I mean, access to capital is still very, very important. They all want capital, and the early stage capital is important. And I usually think that, okay, almost 3 out of 5 will go bankrupt of the startups. So it's a high risk investment for investors. But you need to kind of fill a lot of startups to get a few scale-ups coming out. So if you stop investing in that, yeah, so I think at least from Stockholm's part, we have a job to do to get more early stage investors. We have access to that capital, but we need more, especially to social innovation when you can't count back the money as fast as other tech.
And in addition to what you mentioned, I think it's also good if an ecosystem can provide people who are experienced already.
Definitely.
So if you have startup founders that already had an exit, that reinvested because they have so much experience from the practical point of view, that this is very important for the younger upcoming founders to have these people around. And if you don't have maybe in your niche someone here in the ecosystem, it's good to connect internationally with someone, because this is really very important for them, and they can spare a lot of failures maybe,
Yeah.
being in touch with someone who had already done it.
This role model that you highlighted is very important. And you need also places where you meet these role model players. I think about clusters, and as far as tech is concerned, these tech and innovation clusters are really so important to help people meet, work together, plan collaborative projects, and raise funds. But yeah, we have 8 different clusters in the Paris region, and it helps a lot people to find their next partners.
But I think it's also important to do a little bit bubble bursting, because if you look at the IT startups and then the impact startups and the life science startups and creative industry startups, often I think there's a huge potential if they would talk with each other as well and not just within their bubble. So this is why we also try to do some initiatives to do a little bit. So Vienna Up is also one way to somehow mix this communities a little bit more, because I think there's a huge potential also for new creative ideas if these people come together.
And you know, this actually builds off some of the questions we're getting, which are very investor related. So I think we're probably going to end in this kind of area, and no surprise, right? Capital is always on people's minds. But so, like, how developed should an idea be before a startup goes to talk to an investor? Like you talked about startups doing their due diligence and talking to other groups and sort of validating that idea. Does that always have to happen before they speak to an investor?
I think that today investors are really difficult to convince, more than 10 years ago. So you have to be owner of a very developed idea, and to show the ability to shift is this idea is not on the right track.
Yep.
So I think that's a good idea at the time you talk with the investor, but also really a team that shows experience and an ability to shift.
I agree, but that's why it's so important that the cities does pitch nights or network evenings, because as a start, there's too many startups and too few investors. They won't have time. So we work a lot with putting female entrepreneurs on stage, focusing on the social innovation, or looking at other health tech companies, and you do a pitch nights, because then you can gather, and the early stage startups get to know the investors quite early, and then they can call them up and book a meeting after a few months, and it will be easier. So that's how we as a municipality can facilitate for the business to be done.
Yeah, so building that relationship over time with the investors. Now, this also kind of relates to another question that's been asked is, do you actually see that the investor community is interested now in impact investing? Is that a trend that you're seeing where they're willing to put their money where their mouth is?
Yes.
And make those investments?
Oh, yes.
Good. Tell us more.
No, I think the Bloomberg article that was launched in December really showed it, that Sweden and Stockholm is attracting most of the impact capital in Europe, second after US. And I really see a shift in the investors of what they want to invest in. And we just done the impact report, and I asked Sting, which is the Stockholm Innovation and Growth, that was chosen to be the world's best accelerator last year.
Wow.
And they do sustained tech days. And I'm like, have you seen a shift between, before COVID and now? She's like, hey, it's exploding. It's exploding because people are more into doing good, or they're more conscious. I think we're all good people, but I think we're getting more and more conscious.
And maybe in addition, for those investors who maybe don't want to save the world. It's even an issue of money, because if you think of CO2 emissions, of the criteria
Yeah, exactly.
also bank will need that you fulfill in order to get some money, it will be more expensive in future as well if you don't deal with social and ecological impact of your company. So anyway, if you are not, do not want to save the world, it's also from business point of view a
You're absolutely
necessity
right.
if you want to be successful in future, that you have to deal with the questions. So it's also a business question.
Investing in it today.
Yeah, and if you look at the regulations that are coming, it will be expensive if you ignore that topic, especially in Europe.
Very true.
In Paris, the investment in impact companies have been quite shy, quite slow. On the one hand, so you have this low investment, but on the other hand, you have events like Change Now, which was 2 weeks ago, which was a big concentration of impact players. It was wonderful and very stimulating. So, and this was the most international event, maybe after Vivatech in 2 weeks, that really brings this global attention on Paris, and that will lead to more investment.
And it's a big market as well. CO2 emission reduction, fake news detection, trustworthy AI. So if you have solutions there, it's a huge market if you have a good product in that field. So it's also, I think, also investors know that.
I
Absolutely.
usually ask people that work in impact, what do you see as the biggest challenge, or what SDG would you, if you're investing? But I spoke to Niklas Adalbert, who runs the Norsken House and was one of the Klarna founders, and he said he's most afraid of fake news and cybersecurity questions. So it's, the impact is coming in
Very interesting.
various ways.
So I'm sure we could talk about this all day, but surprisingly, our panel has come to an end now, and we're at time. So with that, let's wrap up. I encourage everyone in the audience, if you have additional questions, please seek out these panelists. I'm sure they would welcome speaking with you. And let's continue this conversation afterward in the networking. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much to the panelists and to the moderator. Our time on the stage is over. However, the real work begins now with networking. At about 5 until 12, we will roll out as one toward the restaurant Au Gazelle. Please do join us. And until then, please hang out, have another drink, chit chat, enjoy the view. And this is important, get a wristband. Because, as Mr. Hietzi mentioned before, Gad mentioned before, there are some things available to Vienna Up participants, but you need the wristband to get them. Those include the wine that keeps coming up. So get the wristband and then come around, please, to the home base this evening and have some wine. And if you don't know what the home base is, it is on Karlsplatz, and also look at viennaup.com. Okay, thank you all so much.